When I moved into the old duplex on Hawthorne Street, it felt like a blessing. The rent was suspiciously low for the area: 2 bedrooms, a long hallway, and a basement. The landlady, Ms. Cartwright, was ancient and sweet, with that grandmotherly energy that made you feel safe the moment she smiled. She told me the back bedroom had to remain locked, something about previous tenant belongings. I didn't ask questions. Rent was cheap. I was broke. Done. The house was quiet. Too quiet, really. The kind of quiet where even the fridge seemed to hum more timidly. I chalked it up to living alone for the first time. The hardwood floors creaked like they had memories, and the windows let in cold air even when they were shut. Still, it felt like mine. Except for that door at the end of the hall, it was always locked. Always. The brass handle was ice cold, no matter the time of day. I'd sometimes find it slightly turned, like someone had tried opening it from the inside. But I never saw anyone. Never heard anything more than the occasional knock, soft, like fingernails tapping on wood. I told myself it was just settling wood. An old house making old noises. But that was before the notes started appearing. The first note appeared on my nightstand. I hadn't left anything there the night before, no scraps of paper, no pens, nothing. But there it was, a torn piece of yellowed paper folded neatly in half. On the inside, written in tight, frantic cursive, were just 5 words. "Don't open the door again." I stared at it for a long time, heart thudding in my chest. I hadn't opened the door. I didn't even have the key. I laughed nervously, telling myself it must have been left there by Miss Cartwright from a long time ago, though how it appeared on my nightstand still made no sense. I tossed the note in the trash and went on with my day. 2 days later, a second note appeared, this time tucked under my pillow. "She doesn't like the light." That one sent a chill straight through me. I hadn't touched that door. I hadn't even mentioned it out loud. Who was she? And why did it sound like whoever wrote the notes wasn't referring to Miss Cartwright? That night, I slept with the hallway light on. Around 2:30 a.m., I heard a soft click. It echoed through the hallway like a gunshot. I sat up straight in bed. It came again, this time closer. A creak. Then another. Like footsteps, but not quite. More like dragging. I tiptoed out of bed and opened my door just a crack. The hallway was dark. My lamp, the one I'd left on, had been unscrewed. It hung by its cord, swinging slightly like something had just brushed past it. That's when I noticed it. The locked door, the one at the end of the hall, was open, just slightly. Wide enough to see a sliver of black. Not darkness, not shadow. Black, like absence. I couldn't see anything inside, but I could feel something watching me from that gap. Not waiting to come out, waiting for me to come closer. The next morning, the door was locked again. No sign of it ever being opened. I told Ms. Cartwright what had happened, hoping for some explanation. She smiled kindly, then said something that made the blood leave my face. "Oh, sweetheart, that room hasn't had a door in 50 years. I didn't sleep the night after Ms. Cartwright's words. How could I? A door that wasn't real. A room that no longer existed, yet I had seen it, touched it, heard it creak in the night. That gap in the frame, that cold brass handle, it had been real. The next evening, I taped my phone to the hallway wall, aimed directly at the end where the door was. I set it to record overnight, too afraid to leave my room but desperate to prove I wasn't imagining things. I shut my door, locked it, pushed a chair against the handle, and waited. The next morning, sunlight poured through my window. I was alive. My door was untouched. The hallway was quiet again. Reluctantly, I checked my phone. The footage started normal, dim hallway, no movement. Hours passed in silence. Then, around 3:17 a.m., the hallway light flickered. A soft scratching sound began, faint but rhythmic, like something sharp dragging across wood. And then, frame by frame, the door at the end of the hall came into focus. It materialized. Not opened, not pushed, appeared, as if the hallway itself exhaled and shaped it from shadow. Then a figure stepped out, crawling on all fours, Back arched in impossible angles, face completely blank except for a stitched mouth and two deep black holes where eyes should have been. It crawled halfway down the hall, then stopped, and turned to face the camera. It raised one hand slowly and tapped a long, splintered finger against the lens. The feed went black. I dropped the phone, nearly throwing up. I ran to the hallway. No door, no figure. But on the wall, scratched into the plaster, was a single sentence. "Thank you for letting me out." I moved out that same day, didn't pack most of my stuff, just threw what I could in my car and drove until my hands stopped shaking. Miss Cartwright didn't stop me. She just stood on the porch with her hands folded neatly in front of her, watching me like a teacher watches a student flunking their final test. I didn't look back. I stayed in motels for a while, friends' couches, anywhere with bright lights and no long hallways. I thought I was safe, until the first note appeared again, this time tucked into my glove box. It was the same paper, same handwriting, same sickly yellow tint. We still lived together. That night, the shower curtain in my hotel room billowed as if someone had brushed past it, though the window was shut and the air was still. A few days later, in a rental apartment across town, I came home to find my hallway light flickering. I don't have a hallway, just one door between my living room and bedroom. But the light above it? It sways sometimes now. Even when the air is still, the walls creak more than they should. Not like old wood, like breathing. And sometimes, just sometimes, I hear a soft tap 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 behind my bedroom mirror. I haven't taken it off the wall. I'm afraid of what's behind it. Because late last night, I saw something in the reflection that wasn't in the room. A door at the end of a hallway that shouldn't exist. And it was opening. When my wife and I moved into the farmhouse in Vermont, we were hoping for a quieter life, something far from the pace and noise of the city. The house was over a century old, with faded red siding and ivy growing along one wall. A wide wraparound porch gave it the kind of charm you usually see in old postcards. We were surprised by how affordable it was. Looking back, maybe we should have asked more questions. The first few weeks were peaceful. We began small renovations, fixing up the kitchen, updating some of the older plumbing. At night, the beams creaked in familiar ways. It felt like part of the house's personality. In some strange way, we liked that it spoke to us. Then, in late October, something unexpected happened. I was bringing boxes into an upstairs room we had planned to turn into a little library. We hadn't furnished it yet, just cleaned and painted. As I looked up, I froze. There was now a door in the ceiling, a square wooden hatch with a rope hanging down. An attic entrance? The strange part? It hadn't been there before. We had painted that ceiling ourselves. I'd been up on a ladder, putting in insulation. There was nothing there. But now it looked like it had always been part of the house. The wood matched. A bit dusty, worn but as if it belonged. I called my wife. She came upstairs, looked at it and asked, "When did you install that?" She thought I'd done it. I assumed she was joking. We went back and forth for a while, each thinking the other was playing a prank. Eventually, we just left it alone, deciding we must have missed it somehow. That night, though, I stayed awake longer than usual. I kept noticing faint sounds above us. Not loud, not alarming, just slow steps, as if someone was walking carefully overhead, in the space we hadn't known was even there. I spent the next morning pretending I wasn't bothered. Coffee, emails, light chores, the usual rhythm of pretending things make sense when they don't. But the whole time, my eyes kept drifting to the ceiling, to that hatch. The rope swung slightly, even when the windows were closed. I finally gave in and grabbed a stepladder from the garage. My wife was out at work, and I figured I'd peek inside, maybe find a rat's nest. Some old insulation, something mundane. That's what I wanted it to be. The second I touched the rope, the hatch opened on its own. No creak, no resistance. Just a quiet thump as it fell open, revealing darkness above. A cool draft brushed down across my face. The kind of air you don't expect from a space so small. It smelled wrong. Like wet wood and expired meat, I aimed my flashlight up. The attic was small but not empty. Dust-covered boxes lined the beams. And sitting in the center of the floor was a rocking chair. Not rocking, not tilted, just sitting perfectly still, angled toward the hatch. As if it had been waiting, I climbed up, every step hesitant, until my head breached the floor level. That's when I saw it. The chair was facing a second door, one built into the attic wall. It was smaller than a normal door, maybe 4 feet high, with flaking white paint and no handle. But what made my stomach drop was the dozens of scratches surrounding it. Long, shallow gouges in the wood, all pointing outward, like something inside had been clawing to get out. I didn't go further. I backed down and slammed the hatch shut. Tried to forget it. But that night, around 2 a.m., we woke up to the sound of the rocking chair moving above our bed. It was creaking slowly, steadily, as if someone was rocking back and forth, just a few feet above us. And then we heard 3 knocks, not on the ceiling, on the attic hatch, like someone or something wanted to come down. We didn't sleep the rest of the night. We lay in bed, frozen beneath the covers, listening to the slow, rhythmic creaking of the chair above us. It went on for hours, back and forth, a lullaby composed by something that didn't belong. At sunrise, the noise stopped. I gathered every ounce of courage I had and went back up. The chair was still, but it had moved. No longer in the center of the attic, it now sat directly beneath the hanging light bulb. And on the floor, in a neat pile beneath it, was a new stack of photos. Old, yellowed pictures, black and white, showing people sitting in that same chair. Each photo taken from the same angle, like someone had staged them. The people were different in each one. Some men, some women, but they all had one thing in common. Their eyes had been scratched out. One photo at the bottom of the stack made me drop everything. It was a picture of me, standing in the attic, frozen mid-climb with one hand on the hatch rope. I had never posed for it. I had never seen a camera. But there I was, alone. Except I wasn't. Behind me, in the shadowy corner of the attic, something was peering from the small door in the wall. Not a face, not quite. More like the suggestion of one. A shape in the dark, something aware. I slammed the hatch shut and nailed it closed. That night, we heard the knocking again. Louder this time. And the creaking. But worse than the noise was the whispering. It came through the vents, through the cracks in the floorboards, through the walls. It was a voice not meant for ears. It whispered one word over and over. Down. We fled the house the next morning, left everything, never went back. But even now, in a different state, different home, different life, sometimes I hear the creaking again, late at night. And worse, my wife has started sleep talking. She says the same word every time. Down. It's been 3 years since we left that house in Vermont. We never went back, never tried to sell it, never told the realtors what happened. It just sits there, unsold, slowly rotting into the earth, a place waiting to be noticed again. We moved west, changed numbers, tried therapy. For a while, it worked. The nightmares stopped. The house was just a memory. But then, one evening, I came home from work and found the attic rope. It was hanging from our hallway ceiling. No hatch, just a rope. Frayed. Familiar. Swinging ever so slightly in still air. My wife didn't see it. I asked her a dozen times. Pointed to it. Stood beneath it. She saw nothing. That night, I dreamed I was back in the attic. The chair was empty, but the camera was still there, clicking slowly every few seconds, each photo capturing me standing still, unable to move. And behind the camera, someone breathed. I could hear it, loud and labored. The next morning, on our dining room table, there was a stack of photos, real ones, of me, sleeping. Every photo taken from just outside the bedroom door, all dated, all timed, all from last night. The final photo was of my wife sleeping, facing the wall, and in the mirror behind her, the attic door was open. We tried to move again. It didn't help. Because 2 nights ago, the creaking started again, not from above this time, from beneath the floorboards. And last night, I woke up to see her sitting at the edge of the bed, not moving, just rocking back and forth. and whispering one word: down. When I first moved into my cousin's old townhouse after he left for a job overseas, I thought I was doing him a favor. The place had been in the family for decades, tucked in a quiet suburb just outside of Pittsburgh. The rent was dirt cheap, and aside from some creaky floorboards and the occasional draft, it seemed like a solid deal. He left everything furnished: furniture, dishes, even books on the shelf. Said it would be easier for him that way. I figured I'd stay 6 months, save up, and move on. The first few nights were fine, if a little unnerving. The house had character: sloped ceilings, oddly narrow stairwells, and a strange layout on the second floor. There was a wall in the upstairs hallway that jutted out at a weird angle, like there should have been a closet there but wasn't. No doors, no access. Just a wedge of drywall cutting off a corner of the house. I didn't think much of it. Old homes do weird things with space. But around the end of my first week, I noticed things starting to change. At night, I'd hear faint tapping in the walls, not pipes. Not Woden's, fingers, deliberate, rhythmic. I'd sit up in bed, holding my breath, and it would stop. The moment I'd lay back down, it would start again, closer. Like someone was moving through the walls, tracing me as I moved from room to room. I tried to ignore it until one morning I woke up to find a note under my bedroom door. No envelope, no handwriting. Just one sentence in bold printed font. I like it when you talk in your sleep. I hadn't told anyone I talked. In fact, I didn't even know I did. That's when I started checking the locks 3 times a night. The night after the note, I barely slept. Every sound felt amplified: the soft click of the fridge cycling, the ticking of the old clock in the living room, and worst of all, the tapping behind my bedroom wall. It had rhythm. 3 taps. Then silence. Then again. Like someone on the other side was listening, waiting, responding. By the 4th night, I snapped. I pulled a chair into the hallway upstairs and just sat in front of that weird angled wall with a flashlight. Midnight passed. Then 1 a.m. Then 2. I was about to give up when I noticed something strange. The wallpaper near the bottom corner of the wall was slightly torn. Not ripped exactly, peeled, like someone had done it from the inside. I got down on the floor and tugged at it. The paper came away easier than I expected, revealing not drywall, but plaster. Old, cracked, yellowed with time. And in the center, about the size of a fist, was a tiny wooden hatch nailed shut and painted over. There was a compartment behind the wall. I went to the garage, got a crowbar, and pulled it open. Inside, there was a small square crawl space, no wider than 3 feet. Dust everywhere. A ratty mattress wedged into one side. Food wrappers, a lantern, and, the worst part, a journal. It was filled with short, jagged entries written in pencil. Most of them were about me. He brushes his teeth at 8:21. He hums when cooking. He had a nightmare last night. Some pages described things I'd never said out loud. Some horrifyingly described things I'd only dreamed. Someone had been living in the walls, watching me, recording me, and I had no idea how long they'd been there. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room with every light on, the journal on the coffee table, my phone in my lap, trying to decide whether to call the cops. But what would I even say? Hi, someone's been watching me from inside my walls? I sounded insane. I started flipping through the journal again. Toward the end, the entries became increasingly erratic, shorter, unstable. He knows. I think he knows. He looked at the hatch too long. I can't stay here. Not if he's awake. The last entry chilled me to the bone. I'll come out tonight. While he sleeps, I want to see his face up close. I stood and ran upstairs. Opened the hatch again. The crawl space was empty. No mattress, no wrappers, no journal. Just a dark, narrow tunnel that stretched deeper than it had before. I didn't remember it going that far back. It should have stopped at the outer wall. But now, it seemed to twist further, swallowing the beam of my flashlight like fog. I sealed it, nailed it shut, moved my bed downstairs, and tried to forget what I'd read. But then came the scratching. It started behind the vents, then beneath the floors, then in the walls of the downstairs bathroom, which wasn't even near the hidden crawl space. And then one night, while brushing my teeth, I looked up. The mirror had a message on it, written in steam, though I hadn't run the hot water. I saw you read it. That was the night I slept in my car. I moved out the next morning, didn't pack, didn't say goodbye to the neighbors, just grabbed my keys, wallet, and phone and drove to a friend's place 2 states over. I couldn't explain it to anyone without sounding like I'd lost my mind, but I knew what I'd seen, what I'd heard, what I'd read. 2 months passed. I started to breathe again. The nightmares came less often. The anxiety loosened its grip. Eventually, I even laughed about it with my therapist. "Your imagination went into overdrive," she said. "You were just stressed. That is, until last week. I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name, written in blocky capital letters. Inside was a photo, grainy, low light, taken from outside a second-story window. My bedroom window at my friend's house. I was in the picture, sleeping, mouth slightly open, face relaxed. And behind me, in the shadows at the edge of the room, was a figure, crouched, hands pressed against the wall, staring directly at the camera. On the back of the photo, written in the same blocky font, were 5 words. No walls between us now. I burned it, changed houses again. But deep down I know, there are no walls thick enough when something's already inside them.